Welcome to A Pair of Bookends, the book club you can carry anywhere. We are your hosts and hopefully your new bookish pals. I'm Hannah MacDonald.
And I'm Lydia Clare. Welcome back, Bookends, to our first episode in our brand new season. We have missed you. We start off with a bang with our September book club pick, the latest novel by Anne Enright, Wren, a generational saga that traces the inheritance not just of trauma, but also of wonder. It is a testament to the glorious resilience of women. Above all, it is an exploration of the love between mother and daughter, sometimes fierce, often painful, but always transcendent.
Anne Enright is a writer that requires little introduction, but I will do my best. She was awarded just last year the Irish Book Awards Lifetime Achievement Award. Back in 2015, she was appointed as the first laureate for Irish fiction, and in 2018 received the Irish Pen Award for Outstanding Contribution to Irish Literature. Anne has written 2 collections of stories published together as Yesterday's Weather, as well as 7 novels and a non-fiction book called Making Babies. Her novel The Gathering won the 2007 Man Booker Prize. The Forgotten Waltz was awarded the Andrew Carnegie Medal for Excellence in Fiction, and The Green Road was the Bord Gáis Energy Novel of the Year and won the Kerry Group Irish Fiction Award. We are delighted to have Anne joining us today to discuss her latest novel, Wren, and welcome to A Pair of Bookends.
It's lovely to meet you both.
It's lovely to have you on, and I knew, as we've been out of practice, that I was bound to butcher something. So I am going to love editing myself after this today. So
It's the best thing. Listen, we've had a break. We'll forgive ourselves.
Always.
So we would always love to start with our favourite question, or my favourite question, let's be honest, which is, what are you currently reading?
Yeah, the way I am now, I'm reading a lot of future books and books that haven't been out yet. So that's not necessarily useful to you. I've just finished Colin Barrett's wonderful book, The Wild Houses. He's an Irish short story writer from Mayo, and this is his first novel. It's very exciting. And I'm actually, really, what I'm actually doing is reading pieces from my students in UCD, University College Dublin. I mean, some of them are 50,000 words long, so they're nearly a book already. So we've been working on them all year, and definitely some future books there for sure. But actually, what I'm doing other than that is I'm working my way through Jean Rhys. Do you know Jean Rhys?
Yes.
Who, I haven't read in decades properly. I mean, I read The Wide Sargasso Sea a couple of times, but I haven't gone back to that kind of sort of sadder, earlier sort of melancholy work. So that's what I'm doing now, just as a refresher.
Oh, amazing.
So a bit of light work, nothing.
Yeah, it's just a couple of, 50,000 word thesis. It's just nothing,
Yeah, well, that's, my job. So I mean, that would be a wrong thing to avoid. But I do actually quite enjoy it. And so, and the Jean Rhys says the problem with being a working writer is that it's very hard to sneak off and just read something that's for nothing whatsoever,
Yeah.
Yeah, we get quite lost in our stack of books for the podcast, and
you have the stack. Where is your stack? My stack is in. I have a special table now for my stack. The hall.
Yeah, all around the house.
I've just got a new book trolley. Hannah, I've not told you this because you'll be excited. I just got a new book trolley just for the podcast, because I was like, I can't keep up with what books are what, so they all get just shoved on there. And I know that that's what I have to read, and everything else, like, they are what I want to read.
But it's really, sometimes you do want to read the ones that you have to read, and so it's just a bit less straightforward than you might think. That's all.
Yeah, exactly.
And Lydia has the addition of being a bookseller as well, so she has to read stuff for Waterstones as well. So your book pile just continues.
It's astronomical. I mean, but I still enjoy it. I still really love doing it.
And are you a finisher? Do you finish?
Yeah, I've never not finished a book. So
right. So opening those covers is like, okay.
It's like, here we go. Dedication.
That is adventurous. Yeah.
Are you not a finisher?
I used to be a total finisher. I mean, I absolutely was a finisher all through my teens and 20s, maybe my 30s. I just read all the way through, and I was really hooked in, tenacious, stuck to the book. Then I had kids.
The end.
Not the end, the interrupting years, you know what I mean? Interrupting years, but not the end. For sure. So now what I have is a chair, a garden chair. Now the weather's been awful, but a good chair in the garden is the best thing. It gets you away from your screens. You can't see them in the sunlight. So even like I'd take a coat and a book out there. It's fantastic.
I love
it
that.
swings. It swings a little.
Swings.
I need
Just a little. I mean, it's not a full swing. You don't get a full swing out of it.
But it's like a gentle rock.
A gentle rock, yeah.
Love that.
There.
I need one of those.
Oh, now I'm like, maybe I should not get the trolley, and maybe I should
No, the trolley is not swings. Love the wheels, so I can't. Mobile books.
Now, I would love to get into the Wren, but first I have to tell you that we've obviously been very excited that we've got you on the podcast, but I've been reading this while I work at a new venue in Manchester called Factory International, and it's like an arts and culture venue. And I've been carrying your book around with me for whenever I've got a spare moment. When I should really be doing work, I've been sat reading. And I have been stopped this weekend alone by 3 different people looking at my book, like different visitors to the centre, being like, oh, you're reading Anne Enright. I love Anne Enright. And then I've been like, yeah, it's a new book. And I had these 2 Irish ladies stop me the other day. And they were like, oh, gosh, you're reading Anne Enright. Like, what do you think of the book? And I was like, yeah, I love it. And blah, blah, blah. We got into this conversation. And then they were like, oh, so like, why have you got, because they could see the date on the side of it. They were like, why is yours like that? And I said, oh, I'm reading like an early copy. I said, I'm interviewing her next week. And they were just like, fuck off. And she said it so loud. She told me to fuck off so loudly. And I was like,
don't let my boss hear.
I was like, wow, okay. So we're
my kind of girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So real visceral reaction.
Obviously a very celebrated writer, but especially so by the Irish, because she was so
they wouldn't say anything to me. That's the thing. that's the that's interesting to hear. Yeah, fun.
They're just shouting at me whenever they shouted.
Yeah, that's
great.
Nice. Yeah, no, Irish people are very not low key, but more or less informal. They don't get up in a heap, really.
I love it. Yeah. I love it.
So they wouldn't let on. They wouldn't let on.
Well, they wouldn't let on to you.
So maybe sometimes. Yeah, maybe sometimes.
So to start off with, I want to find out about the inspiration for your wonderful novel. I am also going to butcher this pronunciation. The author Sarah Bohm describes your book as somehow both classic and thoroughly contemporary. And I actually think that's a really perfect description. But I would love to know what your thoughts are on her saying that, and also what your inspiration was for the Wren.
So I think she's saying contemporary because there's a young character in it who's in her early 20s, and she gets into a bad relationship and she's very online. And so there are a number of things that are kind of current in that, in the culture, I suppose, for young people. That's why she says contemporary. But I've always been a kind of modern writer. But the book also hooks way back into the Irish lyrical tradition. I mean, all the way back to old Irish poetry right in there. So, yeah, I suppose so there's Phil, who's a poet, and he's dead. And his poems are in the book. And then his daughter, Carmel, who's a really kind of tough-minded, get it, keep it together, keep it going sort of mother, And then her extremely lively and adventurous daughter, Nell, who is not a keep it together sort of person. She's a lash at it sort of person. So, yeah, I had been reading and thinking about young women and their concerns, for sure. And that was something I was thinking about and writing about a little bit in terms of non-fiction, what might be called the sexual manners of the time, where all that is, how young women writers are exploring that, presumably also in their lives, as well as in their, not the necessarily the author's fiction, but it's a kind of trope, isn't it, in fiction by young women. But the book really started in lockdown, and it started with Carmel, and there we were, putting one foot in front of the other and just getting on with it. And Carmel had suffered this terrible rupture. Her father had left when their mother was sick, this terrible, terrible thing that happened to her as a child. And so she's very tough-minded. Actually, I was getting a bit worried. I kind of stay with the characters for a long time, and they tell me what the book is if I stick close to it long enough. So, then she had Nell, and then as soon as Nell arrived, I got, oh, here we are. Here is the polarity had been between the lyrical poetry and the kind of reality of the daughter's life. And now here in Nell, we had both of those things going at the same time. So she had a big poetical idea of how to live her life, how, she was going to make her own mistakes. She's going to be free. And she is quite poetic. She's quite poetic. I love Nell.
I love Nell.
But we should get T-shirts made of just.
She's very lovable, isn't it? She's very lovable. She's
so much so.
Good. I was so glad you loved Nell.
In terms of your writing process, do you do like character work? Do you go straight into just writing the novel and seeing where it leads you? Do you start in chronological order? Do you write scenes here and there? Like, how does it work for you?
So I don't write chronologically, although I've written so many books now. I've done all of those at one stage. But I don't fundamentally write chronologically, nor do I write from page 1 to page 288. So those are two different chronologies, aren't they? Yeah. There's the chronology of the book, and not the chronology, there's the line of the book.
Yeah, sorry.
So I don't write on either of those lines, but I do know where I am chronologically. So as soon as I know where I am, I have a timeline, and I say, oh, that happened in 1934, which is a long time ago compared to 2004, which is also now a long time ago. I know where I am in the character's reality. I have a theory, right? And my theory is that when you're writing something, if you stick with what's on the page, it's going to tell you what it is, that the problem is already there in the voice, in the way the sentences are going, in the problem of the character. Put it that way. Yeah. So
I'm just writing that out.
Stay, not even in the character, stay in the language, because the language changes. And certainly my language changes from Nell to Carmel. They're really quite different. They're different points of view. They're different kind of. Nell goes in and out of present and past tense. Carmel's total past tense sort of woman. It happened. She's very literal minded. So I'm very language led, and so putting in those poems made sense of that for some of the readers. They go, oh yeah, it's also about language.
Absolutely, and you can see that and you can feel that throughout the whole of the book. And I think that one of the things that you do so well is, you were talking about, Nell and Carmel, and about them being at very different stages in their lives. And you do this amazing thing of being able to capture women at so many different stages, these pivotal stages, their 20s, their 30s, their 40s, in their childhood.
Right. Somebody was asking me, how can I write a young character? And I thought, well, you never ask someone how they write an old character. Even though they've never been old, we can think, oh yeah, that's easy. You can write an old character anytime. But actually, why not? I'm 60 now, so I have a range of ages in me still. I suppose I'm an old person sitting there waiting to come out.
So why did you want to explore the women at all these different stages? Was it intentionally like, I really want to see them at these points, or was it more of a kind of the text just took you there?
Yeah. Well, I'm just trying to think where I wanted to explore Nell in that relationship with Salem. So I knew where that was going to go. I wasn't going to take her through her school days or anything. That was from her mother's point of view. So I took Nell at the point where she separated out from domestically when she went and got a place of her own. And those early months there, that first year in a place in her own, kind of crap flat, a crap house share.
We've all been in one of those.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting seeing what's ahead of people now in terms of rents and in terms of where they sit in the gig economy and all of that. So that kind of informs Nell's thinking. It's hard to take it out of Nell's thinking. So she's quite political, actually. She's kind of semi-political. It's not formed yet, but it's the kind of conversations I hear online and elsewhere from the upcoming generation. So that's in there too. How did she get herself into this situation with this guy who does what he wants whenever he wants?
Yeah.
And what was that all about? So she's asking what's that about, which is a very good step.
It is a good step.
It's not just the reader who's saying, no, don't do that.
Don't do it.
They're going, what am I up to here?
Are you on social media yourself?
Not really, no.
No.
I mean, no.
But you actually captured that so well about like how, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but I feel like online life can sometimes like...
So I did have a tiny little account so I could just see what it was like.
A burner account.
Yeah, sort of. So just to see what that is. Because so much of social media is about building your reputation as well for people. It's almost like work, or it is.
Yeah, it is.
So that's interesting. That's really interesting. But I, by the time social media came along, I already sort of had a few books out, and I was really fortunate. I didn't have to do all of that. So
yeah,
couldn't have, when it came along, right? I'm not old. Couldn't believe that people were supplying all this free content to someone else,
It's so true. Yeah.
Couldn't believe it. It's like, but then I did some of it. And I thought, well, this is nice because you're making stuff and you have it then in a kind of very fleeting sort of way. So
but it was all consuming. It's
and then it gets really eats your life.
Yeah, exactly. You have to be really careful about like
sometimes I see people get into a sort of weird fantasy space and you realize that they're really kind of not in talking to you, they're actually online.
Yes. Yeah. You have to be really careful about maintaining your presence in reality, which
one foot on the ground.
Yeah. It's so strange.
Maybe 1.5, but maybe 2 feet on the ground.
Hopefully.
If it's even possible anymore,
No, it's not.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
I really want to ask a question, but you just mentioned, is it Phelim? Phelim. Okay, very good. My pronunciation is spot on if you haven't already noticed. But you just mentioned Phelim, and he's a character that I was really fascinated by and really wanted to talk to you about, because he is somebody that Nell has this really like powerful draw to, even though he's a bit of an arsehole, to be honest.
Massive arsehole.
Yeah. Maybe I should have, stayed with the good stuff, however fleeting it was. She's really struck by him. She's really, those words like smitten. It's like a blow, and it's small and it's sharp.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's not like she's. It's like it's just it. The way Cupid's arrow pierces you. She's pierced by this.
Yeah.
They have on the first night together. They have a conversation, and she thinks she says mostly people don't listen. They're just waiting for their turn to speak. we really did talk to each other, she thinks. And then he's kind of sad about something, and she goes, "Oh, my heart," So he is sad. He's sad about his life. Sad people aren't always nice.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe that should be said more often.
100%.
Sad people aren't always nice. Anyway, but the thing about having such a very strong narrator and her point of view is that you also get I hope, a sense that Phelim has another life in which this isn't happening. So their relationship is also a kind of bad space for him. Yeah, at one stage she sits there, he says, "What are we doing?" And she looks at him like, "What?" What do you think you're for? Is this kind of the impulse there? What's this? But anyway, yeah, he's physically very handsome, big, tall, nice looking lad. Yeah, so physically she's very attracted to him.
What do you think?
I didn't describe his face much.
No, but I feel like she's attracted to his bad side as well. I feel like she finds a real pull in that. And I just, what does that say about us?
Well, first of all, so there's intermittent satisfaction, right? So there's that thing that he doesn't call every Wednesday. He calls whenever suits him. So she's in a kind of state of when will he call? So that's very adolescent. It's very teenage crush. And she's a bit old for teenage crushes, but there you go.
I mean, you say it's very teenage crush, but I was definitely involved with people like this in my early 20s where I was like, why are they not texting me back? They never text me back, but I would be like so drawn to that. I'd really enjoy that whole push-pull dynamic. It was like, I don't know, like catnip to me or something.
Yeah, well, your phone is also in your hand. So the not calling is physically in your grasp. The negative is right there sitting in your paw. So it's with you all the time. I mean, it is me being a bit kind of mammyish and saying, put down your phone. The phone. Just walk away from the phone. As if I could, but all of us now, we're in some kind of communication space that's constant and that's open. But so if it doesn't deliver, that's kind of strange now.
I found him such a fascinating character, but I've definitely been involved with a couple of him in my time, and
so he talks like a bloke, right? He talks you sorry, I shouldn't have interrupted you. Go on.
No, go for it.
Well, I'm delighted that I got something recognizable there. So
absolutely,
because I've had a few slightly defensive male reactions to Phelim. He talks like a bloke. He's not giving anything away. You don't know what's in his head. If you ask him what he's thinking about, he says he's thinking about the football. And that's like, I've had several men get insulted at that, saying, I think about a lot more than the football. It's not that. It's what he says he's thinking about.
Yeah.
And maybe even to himself what he says he's thinking about. So he has one sort of dead Twitter account where it's all about the scores and the matches. And it's like he's not giving anything away. He's got an interesting family. His brother, I mean, Phelim is kind of interesting because he has a younger brother who's a total psycho, and she looks at him and knows that would be a problem. Okay. And then he's got another guy, brother, who's just sunny and lovely and cheerful and nice family man.
Yeah, I actually want to ask about that family scene because it felt like it was so vivid and like visceral, and it felt like I was almost watching an episode of something in my mind. Like it was very like I could fully imagine that scene in particular being adapted for TV. Like it was so perfect in the sense of the atmosphere that you created where you're entering this it was sort of like she's entering like a lion's den of like it's his family, but she doesn't know how she's going to be received them or how they're going to be with her, and it's almost like she doesn't really know where she stands with him at all times anyway, but especially in that scene, in that like family gathering, the way they all react to her, the way they all interact with her. Did you enjoy writing that scene? Like what inspired that particular scene?
So I found that really easy. Yeah, I found it easy to write. They're farmers, so I had picked up a farm somewhere and I reproduced it. So I mean, I passed a farm down a laneway in another county, not in County Louth, and it was like huge. I thought, oh my God, look at that industrial looking barns, and everything of this time, little house and then a bigger house that they'd moved into. And then I went on the kind of real estate website to find out what's inside those houses, what kind of furniture is inside those big houses that they built in the 70s and the 80s in Ireland. So there is a play called The Homecoming by Harold Pinter, which is a really kind of gathering, sort of suspenseful, nasty play about a man who returns to his family with his girlfriend called Gillian. I think she's called Gillian. And I studied it when I was about 17. It's a really good play. They kind of destroy her anyway, the family does. And it's really kind of, and there's an absolute monster of a father in it. But I like it also ties into kind of Irish plays where a woman walks into a kitchen or whatever, and she's the interloper, she's the stranger. We know what happens to strangers, okay?
I need to read that play. I'm an actor and I can't believe I've not read that play.
It's so good.
Yeah, I can't believe I've not read it. Yeah,
It's really
go away and buy that immediately.
Also vicious. It's really amazing. Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. One of the other male characters in the novel is Phil, and he is the poet whose poems are kind of interwoven throughout the narrative. We touched on it a little bit earlier. What was it like to create those poems, and why did you place them in the book the way that you did?
The more books I write, okay, the less I can explain why I do things. It's like you write a book and then you get a big explanation afterwards, which is as much of a fiction as the book is, you know?
Yeah.
You just make it up. Okay, why did I do it? Felt right.
Mm-hmm.
Felt right. I took them out and I put them back in again, and I took them out and I put... And I know already there's two kinds of readers. There's always two kinds of readers of everything, aren't there? But there's some readers who just flick past and go, oh, poem. I'm not reading a poem. Why would I read a poem now? And then other readers who read the poem and take it as a kind of pause, another kind of pool of meaning, right, in the middle of the book, and they'll say, what's in there? What's under the water? And they should be still, and they should be lovely, and they should also echo back through the lives of that are being described in the book, so that the themes are there too. So I wanted Phil's poems to be recognisable to the characters, and also as something that they might understand and feel illuminated by, you know, might mean something to them. Phil is gone and he leaves these poems behind. So it was a huge challenge, because I wrote a book, Actress, about also which had the added charisma of fame or being known or whatever. But I had to describe all the movies and the plays that she was in. They weren't real. I had great fun, but you wouldn't be there seeing them. So you had to say, oh yeah, of course she's famous. And that felt a bit made up. So to put the poems in there was to put the writer in there, to put all of it there. So it was really hard. I like a challenge. And getting all that right. And I knew a lot about Phil. I didn't have any problem with Phil as a character. He's one of those people I know. Sometimes, you know, it takes me a while to explore a character, but sometimes they just walk in and you just go, oh yeah, okay, I have you now.
Yeah.
But I really worked on his formation as a poet, to think how the poems might have been written, where did they come from? So I worked on there's a whole lots that I kind of didn't make it into the final draft, but all the books he read as a child, all his influences. So that was a lot of, it was very challenging, a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun to read as well.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed these little breaks and reading his poems and stuff, because I'm not much of a poetry reader. And I wanted to ask, are you much of a poetry reader?
Well, it's one of those things that I never really brought into my public persona. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't go around talking about them, or I wouldn't claim to know anything about poetry. So, I really felt like an imposter when I was writing Phil's poems. And of course I was. Yeah, I would read poetry. You know, now, even in prose, I like books that make you stop reading and look up and think. And poems do that anyway.
Yeah.
You know, so that thing of being hooked in and turning the pages or whatever. I like those things that just stir some funny, nice kind of part of your brain, you know?
Well, we enjoyed them. And
we are not the type of people that skip there.
No, definitely not.
Okay, good.
We definitely read them.
I really want to, I keep saying I want to talk to you about everything, and we definitely don't have enough time with you. But I want to delve into one of my favourite themes, which is female rage, which I just loved the way that you explored that. And I love any kind of story about mother-daughter dynamics. So this was a perfect book for me. I found it so interesting looking at we've just been speaking about Phil and sort of the impact that he has, the sort of rage that he causes the females in his life. And I think the best way that I can describe this book in terms of the atmosphere that you create is like, there are lots of pans on the hob at all times, and some of them are like lightly simmering away, and then others it's like the lid's about to blow off. Like, that is how I felt with the characters. And things got dark in some points in the book. You know, there's a particular moment that I'm thinking of between Carmel and Nell, when Nell is a bit younger and she's been throwing oranges at a light, and that's all I'm going to kind of say. Were you kind of consciously aware that this was a theme that you were exploring, or is this just something that's come out of writing women?
Well, I don't know. Or women. I mean, there's plenty of opportunity to do it when you're writing about men.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't go particularly remarked, I suppose.
Mm.
Thanks for not spoiling the plot. One of my critics gave it all away. And that moment is, I know.
No, we're very careful with spoilers.
Really, thank you. So, that moment is really difficult. I mean, it's really difficult and very taboo breaking. So I'm interested in taboos. I mean, I'm also interested in the fact that books are littered with all kinds of disasters, and the bodies of thrillers are full of dead bodies, and we think that that's okay. But if you describe a small cruelty or a cruelty between two people who feel a bit real, then you're somehow, it's terrible, and you might be a terrible person. Go back to writing dark, unbelievable and speculative fiction about the end of the world. That's not dark. That's not dark. But this is regarded as truly dark, and I think that's, to me, that's a success. But somebody talked about cycles of trauma and abuse. I think that's too strong a word, actually.
Yeah.
I think of it more as in terms of spirals. I mean, the spiral is the shape for the book, so that each time it comes around, it's a little bit further out, it's a little bit milder, it's a little bit gentler, so or more manageable or nearer to resolution. So it's not quite a cycle. It's not locked in. You're not going spiraling down into something. Nell's life is improving. Carmel's life is giving Nell a better chance than she had, for sure. So things get better from generation to generation, maybe you could say.
Yeah.
If luck holds, as if your luck holds. So you look at the kind of the violence in the book between people, and in Phil, when we get his chapters, we see how intense the violence is in his childhood, and it's seen as normal. And then there's, in Carmel's life, Phil goes around hitting them all on Saturdays when he sees the reviews in the newspapers, because he's a poet, and that's seen as being kind of almost comical and a bit like, the weather. If you get in the way, it's your fault.
Yeah.
Then there's a kind of thing that plays out between the siblings, between the sisters, between Carmel and her sister, and that's still a bit kind of comical. People hitting each other is kind of funny in that zone right there.
Yeah.
When it gets to Carmel and Nell, it is the worst thing you can imagine. It is a complete betrayal of the love that Carmel has for her daughter. It's just the worst thing. So is that better or worse? I would say it's certainly interesting that those two things go in different directions. So when violence was general, or in a family or society where violence is general, that is clearly much worse when we think, it's okay, it's all fine.
Yeah.
Look at those Egypts. That sort of thing is probably much worse. Possibly. Piece of questions. Yeah.
I found it really interesting what you said earlier about how with men we don't really remark on their rage, even though there's similar things can happen. But I just think that female rage is such a specific type of rage. Like it's more accepted socially or societally for men to be angry, but it's not as much for women. And I think, you definitely get a sense of that with Carmel, in that like she's lived in this household where Phil has raged about and hit them over the head with whatever, and she's had this relationship with her sister, she's had her mother in bed, and she's kind of had all these things that not necessarily suffered, but all these things have impacted but she's all these things have impacted her, of course, throughout her life. And then it's almost like that rage comes to the surface when she has a child, and it's almost like her daughter's a reflection of her, and that brings something out of herself.
But the daughter fixes everything and makes everything, and the opposite.
Yes, yeah, exactly that.
Hard, isn't it?
Yeah. I there was a lot of moments that reminded me of growing up with my mum, and I was like, wow.
What I did, I drew the veil of charity over Nell's teenage years. Just one or two places where she says it was just one long, they're all shouting at each other. And yeah, no, I mean, these are issues of connection and abandonment. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When Nell comes out, Carmel looks at her and says, and thinks that Nell knows just how lonely she's been. So all her life, these are really strong, psychoanalytical truths, maybe. That's what I'm reaching for. Some sense of very primal stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of pressure on Nell. You know, she's just
I mean, at one stage, Carmel says, "I gave you my whole life," and Nell says, "Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you." And that's also funny, you can see that so that is also funny. And the book brings Nell home, and it brings Nell home to herself, which is also brings her into a new relationship with Carmel, sort of a much more grown-up relation. I think it was probably tough enough, at the end. Well, I don't want to give away things, but, I mean, Carmel is hard work, And Nell has got plenty going on as well, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So right bang in the middle of the book, Nell wonders why they can't save each other. Two people who love each other, absolutely, yes, they do. So that's a seems like a sad question, but it contains its own answer, They love each other, absolutely. And so it contains the inescapability of the difficulty and the solution to the difficulty at the same time.
Absolutely. And I think that their relationship, Carmel and Nell's relationship, is so all-encompassing, and it's very much like there's a lot of pain in that relationship, and yet so much kind of light as well. And I think that's very indicative of what mothers and daughters go through,
Yeah, no, sure. And I think there is a kind of thing that you can say about all mothers and all daughters. But Carmel is two things. She's completely steady and abiding. So Nell knows that she's always got Carmel. Carmel will always have her back. She knows that completely. But also, she's controlling. She lacks insight. I mean, she doesn't necessarily know why she does what she does, and it's possibly because she's so pragmatic. She's just doing it. So the answer is in the fact. She doesn't overthink stuff, or even sometimes think at all. She's just putting things in place. So everyone says to her, "Carmel, you have no imagination," and of course, imagination is empathy. It is all kinds of good connecting sort of stuff. We're not always off in our imagination. We imagine the lives of others. And that gives us insight. And those insights sometimes bring us into a better place and make relationships better. But Carmel is just a kind of so solidly herself that makes it difficult for Nell, who is full of imagination.
Absolutely. And I think
that's different to other people. That is like when you say mother and you say daughter and you put those two words together, we're supposed to go, oh, that means that kind of difficulty. And it does on one level, but every mother is just a person who had a child, right? So they're all just people. And every daughter is a person in her own right. She is, so it's not absolute.
Yeah. And you were saying that the book kind of started with Carmel, and that, when she had Nell, that was when you kind of saw this path for her and for the narrative. What kind of book do you think it would have been without Nell?
Oh my God. I wouldn't read it. Yeah, she's what would it have been like without well, Carmel has nowhere to go, you know. She has nowhere to go without Nell. I suppose you can accept to the past, but that's not to say anything about anything. That's just to say, you know, and I'm not saying anything about people's lives. I'm just talking about this book.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't, for example, think that people should have children and that children will fix something. I'm just talking about within the compass of this book, within this circumference. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Maybe I could have done it some other way. I mean, that's a thing.
Don't go back and rewrite anything, please.
No, I couldn't at the time see another way, another path.
I think it's so interesting as well because, and I don't know if this is just specific to me or to other people as well, but when I was growing up and as I've like got older, like I've only just now, when I'm like 28, I've only just now started to see my mum as like a fully formed human being rather than just as my mother. Like that's a really terrible thing to say. Like, but I think it's so funny, isn't it? That like, it's so strange. Yeah, I'm glad it doesn't make me a terrible person. But
and so what's that like then when you say, oh yeah, she must feel this or that?
I think it's easier for me to see it because I've got 3 younger sisters, and so I feel like I've always played a secondary mother figure. So I don't know if that's helped me to see her as a fully formed human being as well. And I don't know, I think I've just got a lot more empathy for
yeah.
Whereas when I was growing up, I was like, why are you so angry at me all the time? And now I'm like, because everything is so
to do. Yeah.
Everything is hard.
Yeah. Well, so that's all kind of incomprehensible. But I'm thinking back in the bad old days, that thought wouldn't have even risen to the surface because you know, there were no washing machines, for example. So you don't have the mention of sitting around thinking, why does she hate me? You're just rubbing, you know. Maybe.
Who knows?
Who knows? Why is she cross? You know, that is. But I mean, there are worse questions than why is she cross. I mean, why is she sad? That's a really interesting question for a child to ask about their mother.
Yeah, I feel awful.
Why is she crying? Why is she crying? Oh my God.
I definitely didn't think that when I was younger. I was just like, it's all about me. Why is
she's crying because of me?
Because of me. She hates me.
She must know. I mean, yeah.
It was never, you know, there's probably many external factors that are causing this. It's always,
but
she must be upset because she hates me.
Properly all about themselves. I mean, that's age appropriate response, you know. Yeah.
I really want to speak to you about another woman that is in Carmel's life, which is her sister. And many of the listeners of the podcast will know that like I said before, I'm very drawn to women altogether, but because I have 3 sisters, I love reading about other sisterly dynamics. And I thought theirs was a very interesting dynamic. I have no other word. And I know that, and I don't want to spoil anything, but it's Imelda, isn't it? Is that how I say her name? Yeah. Imelda is sort of the primary carer, can I say that, for their mother?
Yeah, she's the what we used to call a little mammy. So what you're describing, a little mammy. So that's a very old-fashioned phrase, but
I love that phrase. But there's almost like this sort of resentment that's built up between the sisters, and because Imelda's taken on that responsibility and Carmel hasn't, and sort of what I suppose grows between them during their mother being ill and what grows after their mother passing. I just wanted to hear you speak a bit more about their dynamic and why sisterly dynamics are so prone to sort of changing and evolving in such short spaces of time, I guess.
I don't know. Are they?
I think so. I don't know. Maybe it was just in this.
Yeah, no, sibling order is really interesting, isn't it? So
yes.
When the mother is sick, when Terry, their lovely mother, is sick at the beginning of Carmel's section in the book, Imelda is fully adult. She says she's 17. But then you see how terrible it is for Imelda. She nearly fails her exams, which she was, she wanted to get into. It really hits her at a hard time, at a time when these things shouldn't be a concern, And you'd have a lot of sympathy for Imelda there, but it doesn't make her a nice person necessarily, or maybe not a nice person, but it doesn't make the relationship easy, put it that way. Mm-hmm. She has all the responsibility, and she turns it into, she becomes the keeper of the flame, which is a kind of a woman. There is a kind of a woman who does that, who is she's quite grand about Phil, about his reputation as a poet. She makes speeches at little do's and gatherings, and she's like, I don't know, going back to a priestess in a temple. She's the keeper of the flame. She takes that very seriously. Mm-hmm. I'm not describing her very well, am I?
No, you are.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so she's kind of reverential, and that means that puts her above everyone else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So she's quite snooty as well. At the end, Carmen says she's an unwavering snob. Also, she doesn't trust anyone who deals with Phil. She thinks their motives are wrong. So she becomes very kind of full of reverence, and maybe she's a bit of a nun, You don't know nuns. I'm not seeing a big howl of recognition there going, oh yeah, my God, she's just exactly like that nun I know.
No, we don't.
No.
No, I there's a moment where, is it at the funeral? And I can edit anything out if there's any spoilers at any point. Mm-hmm. But there's a moment where it might not have been a funeral, but they're speaking about Phil regardless, and the American wife, is it?
Yeah.
Speaks about him, and I can't remember the exact words that Imelda says, but I'm sure she's like, oh, the nerve of that woman. Like, it's something along those lines. And I think, what you were saying before about, like, Carmel says that she's like this unwavering snob. You do get a sense of, like, she's just like, who are these people and what are their motives and why is this woman here? Even though this woman's clearly had some strong involvement with Phil, but she's like, why is she here?
Imelda owns it, Yeah. She owns it. And that's her compensation for her tragic loss of her father. She owns him. So with the way she owns him and his reputation and all the rest of it, means that she can't blame him or mourn him. She still is enthralled to this idea of him as a great person. So she can't just turn around and say, oh, by the way, he left us. That's their proper kind of anger is robbed, that has been robbed by his lovely poems.
Yeah.
And
his legacy.
Yeah. But no, Connie, the American wife, wants to hand over some archive notebooks that she has. And Imelda immediately, she's just the nerve of her. Like, she's looking for some trouble.
It's so great.
I loved her.
I loved
Imelda.
Good.
Like, yeah. I don't know. I feel like she was just, she kind of like that voice that you want to be when you want to be a bit selfish, when you want to be a bit kind of like, no, I don't want you to be kind, and no, I don't want your help. Like that kind of, those little naughty thoughts in the back of your head, and you think, oh, I'm going to quash them. I'm going to make sure they don't come out because I'll be impolite, or I'll be, that's not the right thing to say. Imelda's just got no filter. She just lets them come out.
Yeah, because she's doing it from a place of superiority, she would say anything.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. Absolutely. But there's some kind of catharsis in there, I think. A little bit of like, oh, I'm kind of glad she said that.
Yeah. Yeah, good.
And so finally, I'm noticing the time we're getting to the end.
That's a kind of rage too, though. Snobbery is a kind of rage.
Yeah. Massively.
Totally.
That's why you say a raging snob. That's exactly what it is. It's anger turned into this kind of glass,
Yeah. And it's kind of a bit more insidious in a way.
Yeah.
It gets you in a...
It makes other people angry.
Yeah.
So the anger is pushed right out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sneaky.
Mm.
But yeah, no, I think it's a very interesting, Imelda's a very interesting character, and I think our listeners will really enjoy delving into her.
Absolutely.
And seeing that firsthand. But finally, before we let you go, because we are running low on time, I would just like to ask you a question merely off my own back, which is, what does a typical writing day look to you? Do you have like a set routine? Are you like, I have to do this to get the writing done? Or are you just like, I'm here, there's a notebook, let's go?
No, I work on a laptop. And I don't worry about that. Like, I don't go offline or anything.
Yeah.
I know I'm working if I don't eat until 3:00. That's how I know. It's really funny. Like, I'm gonna do it. Get that. I get the coffee delivered to me.
Oh no.
Yes, nice cup of coffee. 2 cups of coffee, actually, carefully spaced. I kind of keep going. I'm kind of going to stop any minute and get my breakfast, and that doesn't happen. So I know that's a good working day, and that's when I'm really. My only problem is that I don't know when to stop working. So, and that's partly because the online thing is there as well.
Yeah.
So maybe at 4:00 I'm starting to pretend to research. No, I'm actually probably not researching, or I'm catching up on emails or whatever. So my problem is stopping working. That's my lack of discipline right there. People say, are you disciplined? And I should say, no, I can't stop working. That's my lack of discipline right there. Whatever it is, being zone. Work is too kind of chunky a word for what I do.
I love that. I think that is a good sign of a working day for me as well, if I've not eaten.
2 cups of coffee.
So, yeah, 2 cups of coffee, maybe 3, you know. I love that. Oh my goodness. And this has been so wonderful. It's such a privilege to have gotten to sit down and chat to you. We absolutely don't take this for granted. And yeah, we're so thrilled that you came onto A Pair of Bookends. I'm going to very sneakily ask if you have any recommendations for us to finish on.
For books?
Sorry, it can be for anything, for books, TV, films, anything that you've been enjoying recently that you want to shout about.
God. No, nothing there. What am I reading now? Oh, that book has been there for 2 years. Okay, so.
Oh my gosh, it's like my bedroom.
No idea. There's more out in the hall. So, been had Barbenheimer. I'm not going to recommend that.
Yes.
Well, should I recommend that? Yeah, I'm going to recommend that you get yourself some lovely Irish poets.
Yeah,
lovely.
Some slim volumes. The greats like Longley and Heaney, but the new voices and the female voices like Jessica Traynor and Jane Clarke, Leontia Flynn, the North, Sinéad Morrissey. I mean, there are amazing voices out there. Victoria Kennefick is writing well. Leanne O'Sullivan. I mean, there's a whole gang of them. Wow. And you just dip in because they have all that kind of tradition and they're doing something that's new.
I'm definitely going to be ordering some of those. So thank you so much. Love that. I need some more poetry in my life. Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. I also have a recommendation, which is what I have moved straight onto after the Wren, which is Anne's novel Actress, which is absolutely fantastic, and I cannot recommend enough. I'm about halfway through, and I can't put it down. So if you are listening Bookends and you've got a copy of the Wren and you're reading it along with us, please line up Actress for your next one, because I've got a feeling that I'm going to be exploring the whole back catalogue now because I'm a bit addicted to this writing.
Here somewhere.
Oh, is it there?
Yeah, I think.
There you go. Get to it next, Anne. Get to it next, because it's well worth it. It's fantastic.
Amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. That's lovely.
No, thank you. This has been such a joy. And for our listeners, The Wren, when this episode goes out, is out now, and no, it is already out now in hardback, and it's published by Jonathan Cape. So I will pop a link in the show notes for you to order yourselves a copy. And I will also pop Lydia's recommendation, Actress, in the show notes as well. But Anne, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You've been really easy to chat to.
Good.
Oh, fab. Good.
Pleasure. Bit too insightful at times.
Oh.
But thank you, Anne, and thank you, listeners, for listening. And goodbye.
Goodbye.